Probably the simplest type of exocrine cell in the body are visible in the epithelial lining that lines the interior of the intestines. Perform their function in big masses, and they're gathered together to form glands that secrete material into a duct. So there's a great variety of exocrine cells in the body, and I'd like to describe to you some of their different functions. Most of the cells that line the intestines are formed as simple columnar absorptive cells that help absorb food from the inside of the lumen. But scattered among these absorptive cells in the intestines are secretory cells called goblet cells. And the goblet cells derive their name from their unusual anatomy. Each goblet cell resembles in lots of ways a wine goblet. At the bottom of the wine goblet, in the stem that you hold the goblet by, we find a little crunched together nucleus of the goblet cell.
The building blocks of human life.
Occupied by very large secretion granules that fill the cell much like wine would fill the goblet in a wine goblet. These are very unusual cells, but they're very common in the intestines, and they perform a very important function. Where do they come from? Well, the goblet cells in the intestines come from the same source as all the other cells in the intestine. They originate from the stem cells that are located at the bottoms of folds of
the building blocks of human life.
And the goblet cells derive their name from their unusual anatomy. Each goblet cell resembles in lots of ways a wine goblet. At the bottom of the wine goblet, in the stem that you hold the goblet by, we find a little crunched together nucleus of the goblet cell. The remaining portion of the cell at the top of the cell is occupied by very large secretion granules that fill the cell much like wine would fill the goblet in a wine goblet. It's been estimated that something like 70 billion cells are formed in the human intestine every day. These cells have a fairly short life. They migrate away from the stem cells, do their job of absorbing food or secreting material. They live for about 3 to 4 days, and then eventually they die and are shed into the lumen of the intestine. So the stem cells in the intestine are extremely busy, and they have to multiply all the time to replace all these cells. Where do they come from? Well, the goblet cells in the intestines come from the same source as all the other cells in the intestines. They originate from the stem cells that are located at the bottoms of folds in the epithelium that line the intestine. These folds are called crypts, and they contain the stem cells that rapidly divide and replace all the epithelial cells in the intestine that gradually are worn away. The stem cells within the intestinal epithelium are
the building blocks of human life.
replace the cells that die in the intestine.